Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. In the previous lecture, we had started with the topic of pulmonary circulation. In today's lecture, we will continue with the same topic and we are going to study the effect of hydrostatic pressure gradients in the lungs on regional pulmonary blood flow. We will also study about the pulmonary capillary dynamics, and we will briefly discuss about the pulmonary edema and pleural effusion. So we are going to begin with the first topic, that is effect of hydrostatic pressure gradients on the regional pulmonary blood flow. You all must be knowing that hydrostatic pressure is caused by the weight of the blood itself, and this hydrostatic pressure is affected by the gravity. In systemic circulation, you have studied that the blood pressure in the foot of a standing person can be as much as 90 mm of mercury greater than the pressure at the level of heart. Now this pressure difference is because of the hydrostatic pressure being affected by the gravity. Now hydrostatic pressure differences also occur in the lungs in the same way as these occur in the systemic circulation. In an upright adult, the lowest point in the lungs is 30 cm below the highest point, or we can say that in an upright person, the distance between the apex and the base of the lungs is 30 cm. Now this 30 cm difference between the apex and the base of the lungs represents a pressure difference of 23 mm of mercury between the highest and the lowest points of the lungs. So a vertical distance of 30 cm causes a 23 mm of mercury pressure difference between the highest, which is the apex of the lung, and the lowest point of the lung, which is the base of the lung. Now of this 23 mm of mercury, 15 mm of mercury pressure difference, it is present above the level of the heart, and 8 mm of mercury pressure gradient, it is present at the it is present below the level of the heart. What does it mean? It means that blood pressure in the uppermost part of the lung above the level of heart, it is 15 mm of mercury less than the pressure at the level of the heart. Again I am repeating that of 23 mm of mercury, 15 mm of mercury difference is present above the level of heart, and 8 mm of mercury difference is present below the level of heart. It means that pressure in the apex of the lungs is 15 mm of mercury less than the pressure at the level of the heart, and pressure at the base of the lungs is about 8 mm of mercury greater than the pressure at the level of heart. So in the apical regions of the lungs, the pressure is less than the pressure at the level of heart. How much less? It is 15 mm of mercury less than at the level of the heart. And at the basis or the lower part of the lung, the blood pressure is greater than the pressure at the level of the heart. And how much it is greater? It is 8 mm of mercury greater than at the level of the heart. And this difference is because of the hydrostatic pressure which is being affected by the gravity. Now what happens due to this pressure difference on the regional pulmonary blood flow? What is the effect of this pressure difference on the regional pulmonary blood flow? It has a profound effect. Due to this pressure difference, there are different zones of blood flow which can be found in the lung. Due to this pressure difference, there is difference in the regional pulmonary blood flow, which results in the formation of zones of pulmonary blood flow. In this diagram we can see that the vertical column of 30 centimeter between the apex and the base of the lung, it causes a pressure difference of 23 millimeter of mercury, and this is because of the effect of gravity. In the apical regions you can see there is less blood flow, and at the bases there is more blood flow because of this pressure difference. Here you can more clearly see in this diagram that in the apex of the lungs, because the blood pressure is less, so there is less blood flow, while in the middle zone there is intermittent blood flow, and in the lower there is a continuous blood flow, or we can say simply that blood flow in the apex is less, more in the middle, and most in the lower part of the lungs. Now one thing to remember is that the blood flow through a part of lungs, it depends upon the pressure difference between the alveolar air pressure and the pulmonary capillary pressure. So if the pulmonary capillary pressure is greater than the alveolar air pressure, the pulmonary capillaries will be distended and blood flow will occur through the pulmonary capillaries. But if the alveolar pressure is greater than the pulmonary capillary pressure, it is going to cause compression of the pulmonary capillaries. So pulmonary capillaries can collapse and there will be no blood flow. So again I am repeating that blood flow through the pulmonary capillaries which are surrounding the alveoli, it depends upon the pressure difference between the alveolar air and the capillary pressure. So if the alveolar air pressure is greater, capillaries will be collapsed and blood flow will not occur. And if the pulmonary capillary pressure is greater than the alveolar pressure, then capillaries will be distended and blood flow through them will occur. Now due to the hydrostatic pressure differences we just talked, there are different zones of blood flow. So one may find that there are 3 zones of pulmonary blood flow, or we can say that the lungs can be divided into 3 zones because of the hydrostatic pressure gradient. These are called as zone 1, zone 2 and zone 3 blood flow. Again I am repeating, due to hydrostatic pressure gradients one may find 3 zones of pulmonary blood flow in the lungs: zone 1 blood flow, zone 2 and zone 3 blood flow. So now we are going to see one by one what are these different zones of pulmonary blood flow. First we are going to talk about the zone 1 blood flow. Now zone 1 blood flow is a zone of no blood flow. No blood flow during all portions of the cardiac cycle. Here I would like to emphasize that when we talk about the blood flow through a part of the lung, we will talk about the 2 phases of the cardiac cycle, that is systole and diastole. So zone 1 blood flow is a type of blood flow in which blood flow does not occur during all portions of cardiac cycle, that is both during systole and diastole. The reason for this is that local alveolar capillary pressure is not greater, it is not higher than the alveolar air pressure during any part of the cardiac cycle. Since capillary pressure it does not get higher than the alveolar air pressure, so capillaries remain collapsed, they are not distended and blood does not flow through the pulmonary capillaries in zone 1. Now under normal the zone 1 blood flow is present only under abnormal conditions. I am repeating this point, that zone 1 blood flow is present only under abnormal conditions, and when it is present it is seen in the lung apex. And the conditions in which zone 1 blood flow can be seen is either the pulmonary arterial pressure becomes too low, such as because of decreased blood volume, loss of blood due to hemorrhage can result in decreased pulmonary arterial pressure, and this can cause a zone 1 blood flow in the lung apex. Or zone 1 blood flow can also be present if someone is breathing against positive pressure ventilation. So breathing against positive pressure causes the alveolar pressure to becomes high, and increase in alveolar pressure greater than the capillary pressure will cause a zone 1 blood flow. Again, I am repeating that zone 1 blood flow, it is present under only abnormal conditions, and when it is present in the apex or the upper part of the lungs. Now the zone 2 blood flow. Now zone 2 blood flow is the intermittent blood flow. Intermittent blood flow means the blood flow will occur through some part of the cardiac cycle and it will not occur through some part of the cardiac cycle. That is, the blood flow will occur during systole and it will not occur during diastole. So intermittent blood flow is there, blood flowing during systole, and blood flow does not occur during diastole. The reason for this is that during systole the arterial pressure becomes greater. Arterial pressure becomes greater than the alveolar air pressure. So the capillaries will be distended and the blood will flow through the capillaries. During diastole, the pressure becomes less than the alveolar air pressure. So blood flow will not occur during diastole. Now, under physiological conditions, zone 2 blood flow is present in the lung apex. Again, I am repeating that in physiological conditions, in an upright person, zone 2 and zone 3 blood flow is present only. Zone 1 blood flow is present under abnormal conditions. And zone 2 blood flow is present in the lung apex. It begins about 10 centimeter above the mid level of the heart and it extends to the top of the lungs. So this is the region, this is the part of the lung that has zone 2 blood flow in an upright person. Again, I am repeating that zone 2 blood flow, it begins about 10 centimeter above the mid level of the heart and it extends to the apex or to the top of the lungs. Now coming to the zone 3 blood flow. Now zone 3 blood flow is the continuous blood flow. And why there is a continuous blood flow? It is because of the fact that the capillary pressure, it remains greater than the alveolar air pressure throughout the length of cardiac cycle. So that it means that both the systolic and diastolic pressure are greater than the alveolar air pressure. So there is a continuous blood flow throughout the length of cardiac cycle. In normal lungs, in upright position, zone 3 blood flow, it begins about 10 centimeter above the mid level of the heart all the way to the bottom. So the extension of the zone 2 blood flow is about 10 centimeter above the mid level of the heart to the bottoms of the lung. So we can now see that there are two zones of blood flow in an upright person in healthy conditions. Zone 2 in the upper part of the lungs and zone 3 is in the lower part of the lungs. So this is the diagram showing you the three zones of the blood flow which can be seen in the lungs in an upright person. Zone 1 blood flow, zone 2 blood flow and zone 3 blood flow. In zone 1 blood flow, we learned that there is no blood flow, and the reason for this is that the alveolar pressure is greater than the pulmonary capillary pressure. So this is the alveolus, this is the arterial end, artery, pulmonary capillary and the vein. So if the alveolar pressure is greater than the capillary pressure, the capillaries are not distended, these are collapsed by the external pressure caused by this alveolar air pressure, so there is no blood flow. In zone 2 blood flow, there is intermittent blood flow. During systole, when the arterial pressure becomes greater than the alveolar pressure, simply we can say that capillary pressure becomes greater than the alveolar air pressure, it will cause the blood flow through the capillaries. And during diastole, the pulmonary pressure, it becomes less than the alveolar air pressure, so blood flow does not occur. So it is an intermittent blood flow. Then is the zone 3 blood flow. Zone 3 blood flow is a zone of continuous blood flow, and in zone 3 the capillary pressure is all the time greater than the alveolar air pressure, so blood flow occurs throughout the length of the cardiac cycle. So again, the zones of pulmonary blood flow, zone 1, 2 and zone 3 blood flow. And the blood flow to any part of the lung, it depends upon the difference between the alveolar air pressure and the pulmonary capillary pressure. So we just talked about it, that in an healthy adult in upright position, the apex of the lungs receive blood only during systole, because there is zone 2 blood flow. So the apex of the lung is underperfused. It has less blood supply as compared to the lower part of the lung. Now, due to decreased blood supply to the upper part of the lung, this area is predisposed to the tuberculosis. So tuberculosis commonly occurs in the apices of the lungs because of the fact that these areas of the lungs are underperfused. They receive less blood as compared to the other parts of the lung. This we have already discussed, that the zone 1 blood flow, it occurs when there is a fall in the pulmonary pressure because of hemorrhage, or there is a rise in the alveolar pressure due to positive pressure ventilation. So this causes zone 1 blood flow, and when zone 1 blood flow is present, there is no gaseous exchange because there is no blood which can gain oxygen flowing through a part of the lung. So there is no gaseous exchange in the part of the lung having zone 1 blood flow. Now middle and the lower parts of the lungs have more blood flow as the pulmonary pressure is greater than the alveolar pressure. So this is just the comparison of the different parts of the lung. Upper part of the lung receives less blood flow, it is underperfused, while middle and the lower parts of the lungs have a greater blood flow. Now coming to the effect of exercise on the pulmonary blood flow. In exercise, there is increase in the cardiac output, so blood flow through the lungs is increased, and there is also increase in the pulmonary pressures. So zone 2 blood flow is converted into zone 3 blood flow in the lung apex. So during exercise, a person will have zone 3 blood flow in all parts of the lungs, and this is because of the fact that during exercise there is increased cardiac output, which results in increased pulmonary blood flow and increased pulmonary pressures, so that they become greater than the alveolar air pressure both during systole and diastole. So zone 3 blood flow is seen during exercise in all parts of the lung. Next is the effect of posture on the regional pulmonary blood flow. When a person lies down, there is zone 3 blood flow in all parts of the lung. This is because of the fact that in lying position, the effect of gravity is not present to produce hydrostatic pressure gradients. All parts of the lungs receive equal amount of blood flow, and zone 3 blood flow is present in all parts of the lungs in lying position. So this was about the effect of hydrostatic pressure gradients on the regional pulmonary blood flow. Now we are going to talk about the pulmonary capillary dynamics. Now capillary dynamics you have also studied in systemic circulation. The dynamics of fluid exchange in the pulmonary capillaries are qualitatively the same. It means there are same forces that govern the fluid exchange across the pulmonary capillaries, as you have studied in the systemic circulation. But there are some quantitative differences, that is the values of those forces that regulate or govern the fluid exchange across the pulmonary capillaries are different. Now we are going to see what are the differences. Pulmonary capillary pressure is low, only 7 millimeter of mercury, in comparison with the systemic capillaries where capillary pressure is 17 millimeter of mercury. Pulmonary capillary hydrostatic pressure is low, it is 7 millimeter of mercury, while in the systemic circulation it is 17 millimeter of mercury. The interstitial fluid hydrostatic pressure in the lungs is more negative as compared to the interstitial fluid pressure in the systemic circulation. The value of interstitial fluid pressure is -8 millimeter of mercury in pulmonary circulation. The pulmonary capillaries are more leaky, relatively more leaky to the proteins as compared to the systemic capillaries. So the interstitial fluid colloidal osmotic pressure is high as compared to systemic circulation, and the value of interstitial fluid colloidal osmotic pressure is 14 millimeter of mercury in case of pulmonary circulation, while the pulmonary capillary colloidal osmotic pressure, it is 28 millimeter of mercury, which is the fourth force which regulates the fluid exchange across the pulmonary capillaries. So these are different forces governing or causing the fluid movement across the pulmonary capillaries. This is the pulmonary capillary, this is the interstitium, and this is the alveolus. So pulmonary capillary hydrostatic pressure is 7 millimeter of mercury. The pulmonary capillary colloidal osmotic pressure is 28 millimeter of mercury. This is the force which is an inward force keeping the fluid within the pulmonary capillaries, while hydrostatic pressure of the blood is an outward force. -8 is the interstitial hydrostatic pressure. Interstitial fluid hydrostatic pressure, it is a force which causes which prevents the outward movements of the the interstitial fluid hydrostatic pressure, and this is the interstitial fluid colloidal osmotic pressure. Now this is an outward force, this is an outward force, that is the interstitial fluid colloidal osmotic pressure, it is an outward force. Interstitial fluid hydrostatic pressure is an outward force, and the pulmonary capillary hydrostatic pressure is an outward force too, while plasma colloidal osmotic pressure is the force which is an inward force. Now we are going to calculate the net filtration pressure. For this we have to sum up the net outward forces and the net inward forces. So as we just talked that there are three outward forces: the pulmonary capillary pressure, that is the 7 millimeter of mercury; interstitial fluid colloidal osmotic pressure, which is 14 millimeter of mercury; and negative interstitial fluid hydrostatic pressure, which is 8 millimeter of mercury. So adding or summing up all three forces, we will get 29. So 29 millimeter of mercury is the net outward force. The net inward force is plasma colloidal osmotic pressure, which is 28 millimeter of mercury, and this is the force which tends to cause the absorption of the fluid into the capillaries. So the normal जो है outward forces are slightly greater than the inward forces. So 29 is the net outward force, and 28 millimeter of mercury is the net inward force. So net filtration pressure is 1 millimeter of mercury in outward direction. It means that there is a slight continuous flow of fluid from the pulmonary capillaries into the interstitial spaces, and this fluid is pumped back into circulation by the lymphatic system. In the previous diagram where we discussed the forces, the lymphatic system is also shown. So these are the lymphatics present in the lung parenchyma, and the fluid which moves into the interstitium, it is drained by these lymphatic system or the lymphatic vessels present in the lung parenchyma. So this was about the pulmonary capillary dynamics. Now the next topic is pulmonary edema safety factor. Now pulmonary edema safety factor is the factor that prevents the development of pulmonary edema. Now low pulmonary capillary hydrostatic pressure as compared to the plasma colloidal osmotic pressure acts as a safety factor. Pulmonary capillary pressure is 7 millimeter of mercury. So it must rise to more than 28 millimeter of mercury, which is the plasma colloidal osmotic pressure, to cause development of pulmonary edema. Because this is a force which is an outward force, and this is a force which is an inward force. So outward force should increase to at least 28 millimeter of mercury or greater than this to cause net outward flow of the fluid and development of pulmonary edema. So the pulmonary edema safety factor is the difference of these two forces. So 21 millimeter of mercury is the pulmonary edema safety factor, preventing the development of pulmonary edema. And moreover, negativity of the interstitial fluid pressure also helps to keep the alveoli dry, and prevent development of alveolar edema. Now we are going to talk about the pulmonary edema. Pulmonary edema is the collection of free excess fluid in the interstitial tissue spaces of the lungs and in the alveoli. So collection of fluid in the interstitial tissue spaces and in the alveoli is known as pulmonary edema. Now how does pulmonary edema develops? It can develop due to any factor that increases the filtration of the fluid from the capillaries, or the factor which obstruct the drainage of the fluid through the lymphatic vessels. So common causes are left heart failure or mitral valve disease, in which there is increase in the pulmonary capillary pressure, so that the fluid is forced from the pulmonary capillaries into the interstitium and there is development of pulmonary edema. Or it can also be caused by damage to the pulmonary capillary membrane in infections like pneumonia. Due to damage to the pulmonary capillary membrane, there is increased leakiness of the pulmonary capillaries, which will cause more fluid to move into the interstitium, and there can be development of pulmonary edema. Fluid can accumulate in the interstitial tissue as well as in the alveoli of the lungs. The next is pleural effusion. Now, pleural effusion is the edema of the pleural cavity. In the beginning of our respiratory lectures, we had talked in detail about the pleural cavity and the fluid which is present in the pleural cavity. That is the pleural fluid. Normally, a small amount, a few ml of pleural fluid is present in the pleural cavity. But if excess fluid is collected in the pleural cavity, this is known as pleural effusion. Now, pleural effusion can be caused by blockage of the lymphatic drainage, or it can be caused by cardiac failure, or it can be caused by reduced plasma colloidal osmotic pressure, or it can be caused by infections. So these are different causes which can lead to development of pleural effusion. Now the last topic that we are going to discuss is pulmonary hypertension. Now pulmonary hypertension is increase in pulmonary arterial pressure. When we say that a person has pulmonary hypertension, if the systolic blood pressure becomes greater than 30 millimeter of mercury, then the person is said to have pulmonary hypertension. In the last lecture, we learned that normal pulmonary systolic blood pressure is 25 millimeter of mercury. So if it becomes greater than 30 millimeter of mercury, it is said to be pulmonary hypertension. Pulmonary hypertension can occur at any age, and there are different causes which predispose to the development of pulmonary hypertension. So hypoxia can be the cause of pulmonary hypertension because it causes vasoconstriction and increase in the pulmonary vascular resistance and can lead to pulmonary hypertension. Then inhalation of cocaine. Then there are certain drugs like appetite suppressing drugs, or there is a condition autoimmune disease systemic lupus erythematosus. So in these different conditions there can be development of pulmonary hypertension. So what happens due to pulmonary hypertension? There is increase in the pulmonary vascular resistance, which increases the workload on the right side of the heart and can even lead to right heart failure. The treatment of pulmonary hypertension is to give vasodilators such as prostacyclin and its analogs. So that's all for today. So in the next lecture, we are going to start with the new topic, that is gas exchange in the lungs, which is the second step of external respiration. I hope you understand the lecture. Thank you for your listening.